It's been more than a month since my mother went to prison. Time flies, yet it also feels endless, like a whole year stretched thin. This time we really ran out of money. No more ways to pull strings. She had to go. When she committed her new crime, she was still serving a suspended sentence from before, only 3 months left. But even if there was just 1 day left and she failed to complete the probation, the law says the sentences stack up. That means she'd have to serve both, 2 years of the old one and another 2.5 years for the new one. 4.5 in total. 2 months before she left, she told me if I could prepare $200 million, she could stay home. I had the money, but I didn't send it. I said, "Maybe this time you should just go, Mom. Maybe it's fate. You can't keep running forever." She went silent, didn't say a word. She knew she had asked too much of me already. It wasn't that I was heartless or that I wanted her to suffer, but in this house, I'd long learned what buying your way out really meant. That $200 million wasn't freedom, it was just a delay. Next year, another pile of cash, then another. And when the case finally cooled off, another $50 million to close it. Money doesn't grow on trees. I was exhausted. I called my aunt, the youngest sister. She said, "Honey, keep that money for little Kuhn's schooling. Let your mother go for a few years and see later. Even if she stayed home, what would she live on?" Kuhn, my little brother from my mother's second marriage. We don't live together. I only see him 2 or 3 times a year, yet I love him more than anyone. He doesn't even understand what big sister means, but to me, he's everything I ever wanted in a sibling. I'm someone starved for love, and he feeds me spoonfuls of affection every single day. Almost every night he calls me, saying he loves me, misses me. His parents are from the north, but since he was born and raised in the Central Highlands, he speaks with a soft, lilting accent. Adorable, really. Whenever I visit, he clings to me all day, and when I leave, he throws himself on the floor, crying and wailing like his heart is breaking. So when my aunt said that, I made up my mind. No more money for this. I'll save it for Kuhn's education. I still sent my mother some money, a few dozen million, so she could ask for a lighter sentence. The case wasn't serious. After the hearing, she got it reduced to just half a year. Added to the old sentence, that made 2.5 years total. If she behaves well, maybe she'll be released early, next National Day, or the one after that. Knowing that, I felt lighter. The first time my mother got in trouble, I was terrified. I cried as if I'd used up half the tears of my whole life. But this time, I felt strangely calm. I handled everything slowly, carefully, and my heart felt light. Looking back now, I realize my life keeps repeating the same few stories again and again. Yet each time there's a new lesson hidden inside. Each time I grow a little older, a little steadier, a little more aware of who I am. Those pains from the past, they once felt unbearable. But compared to now, they're just like a 5th grade rectangle problem beside a university calculus exam. The last time my mother got in trouble, we still had money. I still had my father. This time, I was alone. Already braced for it, but still alone, with Kuhn to take care of, and all of my mother's leftovers to clean up. And somehow, slowly, I got through it. Because her sentence came during the pandemic, her trial was postponed again and again. After the verdict, she still had 15 days to appeal, and 30 more to prepare before entering the cell. So though the case began early that year, she didn't actually go until August. A week before leaving, she called me and started listing everything. How to bring my little brother back, which belongings to send home, what to do with the documents. My mother was sentenced in the Central Highlands, while I was in Hanoi. No flights during the outbreak, so my aunt said she'd take my brother in, handle school, while I supported them financially. I told Mom to sell her stuff. We could always buy new things later, but she refused. She felt sorry for herself, for the fall from grace, and didn't want to sell things cheap. So she hired someone to haul all her belongings back to my aunt's house. Nearly $20 million for trucks and delivery. She even told me to keep paying for her business SIM cards each month, to keep the numbers active. I thought, what for? When she gets out, she won't go back to that old job anyway. She's an amazing cook. I just want her to open a small eatery or a grocery stall, something simple. But no, she insisted on keeping those numbers. And I knew why. More than 2/3 of her contacts were business people from that border town. Smugglers, dealers, people living off shady trades. I tried to talk her out of it, but as usual, none of my words could ever get through. So, in the end, I just sighed and agreed. My mother went to prison on a Thursday afternoon, but starting that Monday, I couldn't calm down. If it hadn't been for the pandemic, I would have gone with her, right after the trial, and stayed by her side for a month, until the day she left. I knew she could take care of herself, she always could, but I was afraid she'd be lonely, afraid the headaches would come back, afraid she'd have no one to talk to when it got too heavy. Before she went in, she was so calm, almost too calm. She went out to buy sanitary pads, work gloves, skin ointment, the things she'd need inside. Those last few days, our phone calls were short, stiff, awkward to the point of pain. Mom, did you eat yet? How are you today? I did. I'll call you later. I'm out shopping. Mom, if you want to talk or cry or anything, just call me, okay? No, I'm busy. What's there to cry about? Just worried, that's all. I wanted her to feel free with me, to talk, to be open. But she held back. Many times, she told my aunt that she felt guilty toward me. And yet, when she actually spoke to me, she became cold, distant, as if there was an invisible wall between us. I thought to myself, if I can't be her comfort, maybe someone else can. So I called my father, one of the important men in her life. I said, Mom's going to prison soon, 2.5 years. I wasn't going to tell you, but she's leaving soon, and I don't know what to do to ease her mind. Can you call her, Dad? Just talk to her a bit? My father paused. I could hear him trying to steady his breathing. Then, gently, he said, I knew something was going on these past few months, but you didn't say anything, so I didn't ask. Don't worry, I'll call your mom in a bit. That phone call, as Dad told me later, was the briefest one they'd ever had. He had just started with, I heard from our daughter, when Mom suddenly burst into tears, crying like a child. She sobbed so hard she couldn't speak, and Dad just stayed quiet, letting her cry for what felt like half an hour. He knew better than anyone, Mom hated prison. Because of prison, they had grown apart. Because of his prison time, she had suffered. And yet, who could have guessed she'd end up in the same place one day? Knowing she could cry like that actually made me feel at peace. At least she could release all that sorrow, with the one person who truly understood. Since the day she left and Dad was released, they hadn't cried together once. When Dad finished his sentence, Mom called to check in. They agreed to just stay friends. Dad even went through the paperwork so Mom could officially register Kuhn's birth. Later, when Mom and her new husband had problems, Dad said, if she comes back, I'll treat Kuhn like my own son. But Mom, she was impulsive. There was a time she mocked Dad for being useless, for living off the family, even selling the land Grandpa had left me, just to party. Dad resented her deeply. When she once came to visit, he tricked her into coming over, then locked her inside and cursed her out like crazy. He was high that day, took all her jewelry and threatened to kill her. When I found out, it felt like dying inside. No emotion, no tears, just this hollow ache. All I could do was look at the people who gave me life. 2 broken children trapped in adult bodies, their wounds too deep for any bandage to heal. Before I met Kuhn, I used to wish he'd never been born, so Dad could take Mom back properly. But once I met him, that wish vanished. When Dad said, "If she comes back, I'll treat Kuhn like my own," I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, if I could convince Mom to return, I'd have a real family again. A full home. With Dad, Mom, and my little brother. But after that day Dad locked her up, that hope died completely. I thought Mom would never forgive him, and he could never love her again. Whenever her name came up, I saw the same awkward guilt in him, the shame of a man who couldn't defend himself when his ex-wife called him useless. The shame of one who had severed the last fragile thread between them. And the bitterness of someone who'd been betrayed, who couldn't keep his own wife. And yet, in the end, Dad was still the only man who could make her cry freely, the only one she trusted enough to let her pain pour out. Their story often feels like a tragic comedy tangled in itself. I remember when Dad first got out, he'd call and tease her all the time. "Hey, love, how's life? How's your husband? Coming home for the holidays?" I'd sit there listening, quietly chuckling. I couldn't tell if it was noble of him or just foolishly carefree.
A few months later, he found someone new. Then, Mom and Dad started texting, arguing, nitpicking, mocking each other, and even forwarding the messages to me. I nearly lost my mind. And now, after hearing Mom cry her heart out again, Dad turned the whole scene into something half funny, half comforting. "Your sentence is nothing compared to mine. Women always get better treatment in there. Don't worry. 2.5 years. It'll feel like 1.5. I've done time more than once. I know how it goes." Listening to Mom retell that line, I honestly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dad went to prison for the last time when I was in 3rd grade. A little over a year later, Mom suddenly stormed out and left home. Back then, all I knew was that she was in debt. In our district, everyone was. Families collapsing in clusters, one after another. Mom was no exception. When I went to clean out her room, I found a thick ledger filled with debts she could never collect. The way she did business, she wasn't big enough to be the boss, so she was both a lender and a borrower. When a few people went under, she went under too. Maybe that's why I grew up hating debt with all my heart. Later, I learned Mom didn't leave just because of the money, but because she couldn't bear living with my father's family anymore. My grandparents loved her, like their own daughter, but my uncles looked down on her for being a traitor. They borrowed from her and never paid back, and when she was in trouble, no one lifted a finger. She left town with just 2 million dong in her pocket. Back then, I called her number over and over, but it was always out of service. I didn't feel like reading, didn't feel like watching The 3 Investigators or Conversations with the White Dog anymore. I'd just sit there all day, staring at the cordless phone she'd bought a few months before, dialing her number again and again. I called so many times that even with my broken English, I memorized the sentence. "The number you have dialed is not available. Please try again later." In my childish imagination, I started thinking Mom had been killed, her body hidden somewhere. At night, I'd dream she was hanging upside down from a tree, swept away by a storm, or thrown onto the train tracks behind our house. She'd left so suddenly. My whole paternal family knew, but no one told me, so I believed she had simply disappeared. One day, she took me to school, bought me a pair of gold earrings, and then she was gone. That day, it was raining hard. I waited for an hour, but she never came back to pick me up. 2 days passed. then 3, then a week. I could no longer convince myself that she'd just gone to restock goods or collect debts. I had to accept it. Mom was gone. No one at home said a single word to me about her. I only overheard Aunt Han, little Tui's mother, whispering, "I saw your mom hugging some man, walking by the bridge," and that was enough. I swallowed my anger, my shame, hunched my shoulders, and pedaled my bike all the way to that bridge, waiting, hoping she would pass by. At that moment, I thought, it doesn't matter who she's holding, as long as she comes back.